The early 2000s was one of the most interesting and exciting times to be a baseball fan. You had Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa hitting home runs like it's nothing. Then you have Ichiro Suzuki giving Mariners fans false hope overnight. And the rise of Moneyball was occurring right in front of our eyes. Well, not my eyes, I was a toddler. If Moneyball was occurring in front of my eyes, I'd have no idea what was going on. Anyway, if there is any team that needs to be talked about from this time period, it is the Chicago Cubs. The curse of the Billy Goat was still alive, and the Cubs were not any closer to breaking it. Let's set the year to 2000. Before this year, the Cubs had made the playoffs only 3 times since their last World Series appearance. Doesn't seem too bad, but you want to know when was the last time the Cubs made the World Series? Keep in mind, we are in the year 2000. 1945, when the curse of the Billy Goat began. After 1945, the Cubs didn't make the playoffs until 1984. Imagine not making the playoffs for nearly 4 decades. Computers went from looking like this to looking like this in the span of 4 decades. So after the Cubs were swept in the divisional series in 1998, and the Cubs went back to being lovable losers, it seemed like all hope was lost. Well, little did Cubs fans know, they were about to have a season for the ages. And the team was going to be led by the best pitching duo in the entire league, Mark Prior and Kerry Wood, also dubbed by Sports Illustrated as Chicago Heat. Let's start with Kerry Wood. He was drafted at number 4 overall in the 1995 MLB draft. He made his debut with the Cubs in 1998. His most notable start of that season was only his 5th start of the year, the infamous 20 strikeout game. He made a Houston Astros team that won 102 games in 1998 look like high school players. Imagine how bored the fielders were. Wood went on to win the NL Rookie of the Year by only 1 vote against Todd Helton. Although, I want to know who gave Kerry Lightenberg a first place vote. I don't want to disrespect those sideburns, but he was not better than Kerry Wood or Todd Helton. Maybe the voter just glanced at the voter sheet and saw the name Kerry and just filled in the bubble. Anyway, if we take a deeper look at Wood's rookie season, it was a historic season for a rookie starting pitcher. Since 1900, of all rookie pitchers with at least 10 starts, Wood is 4th all-time in strikeouts. And when you watch some of the strikeouts from his infamous 20K game, you see just how nasty his pitches were. Unfortunately, this took quite the toll on his elbow. During spring training of 1999, Wood tore his UCL and underwent Tommy John surgery. Tearing your UCL at 22 years old is almost like a death sentence for a young pitcher. Although Wood was able to come back in 2000. While he didn't necessarily pitch back to his Rookie of the Year form, it was promising to see that he was able to pitch the majority of the season. Although it didn't really help the Cubs go anywhere, as for the 2nd straight season, they finished the season with one of the worst records in the league. That means they are at the top of the 2001 draft. Well, not exactly, because the Minnesota Twins were given the top spot in the draft. The consensus best player in the draft was Mark Prior, but the Twins decided to go a different route and choose the hometown kid, Joe Mauer. Prior would be drafted 2nd overall by the Cubs and signed with a signing bonus of $10.5 million. The largest signing bonus in MLB history until Steven Strasburg in 2009. Unfortunately, Prior would make his final pitch for an MLB team before Strasburg even entered the draft. As the Cubs were developing Prior, the Cubs had 1 season of success and 1 season of disappointment. Fortunately, Kerry Wood was continuing his comeback from injury, pitching nearly all of 2001 and basically all of 2002. He was an above-average pitcher, but it wasn't quite the level of 1998. Speaking of 2002, just 1 year after being drafted, Mark Prior was promoted to the Cubs. He made 19 big league starts, basically outperforming Kerry Wood and Matt Clement, the two best pitchers in the rotation. With 2003 fast approaching, the Cubs had one of the most promising starting rotations in the entire league. With Sammy Sosa coming off another incredible season, this team was showing signs that they could make it back to the playoffs. Although I don't think anyone could have predicted who would be taking charge on the team's road to the playoffs. In fact, it was two players, Mark Prior and Kerry Wood. No disrespect towards Carlos Zambrano and Matt Clement, but come on, they didn't make the cover of Sports Illustrated. So how did a second-year player and an above-average pitcher turn into some of the most feared pitchers in the entire league? Well, clearly if you look at the ball in this picture, these pitchers were able to throw some heat. Among qualified pitchers in 2003, Wood and Prior were part of the top 5 in average fastball velocity among starting pitchers. These numbers allowed Wood and Prior to lead the league in strikeouts. In fact, Kerry Wood was the only player in 2003 with at least 10 double-digit strikeout games. Prior ended the season just behind Wood with 8 double-digit strikeout games. There were many times throughout the season where Wood and Prior just completely dominated. In just his second start of the season, Prior threw his first career shutout. 3 days later, Wood threw 8 innings of shutout baseball and only left the game because he had already thrown 120 pitches. High pitch counts were actually an issue that many Cubs fans took exception to. When you look at all of the double-digit strikeout games between these players, here are the average number of pitches that they threw during those games. And here are the average number of innings. That's a lot of pitches, but let's not worry about that right now. We're talking about Chicago Heat. The Cubs stayed in first place for a good portion of the first half of the season, but they went into the All-Star break sitting in third place. The rest of the season was the Cubs' attempt at finishing first in the NL Central. Wood continued his dominance from the first half, but Prior ramped it up for the playoff push, clearly performing better in the second half of the season. Two of the most important starts of the season for these two pitchers actually came towards the end of the season. In late September, the Cubs had somewhat established themselves in second place, but they were only 1 or 2 games behind the first place spot. On September 21st, the Cubs had gone into their game against the Pirates only half a game behind the Astros. With the Astros facing the Cardinals, who were much better than the Pirates, this was Chicago's chance to claim the first place spot. Who's on the mound for the Cubs? Mark Prior. He pitched 7 2/3 innings, allowing only 1 run and striking out 14, only 2 behind his season high of 16. Now, the Cubs are in first place, and they need to hold their position. They went on to start a series against the Reds, who were worse than the Pirates, and the Astros went on to face the Giants, who were better than the Cardinals. Who's on the mound for the Cubs? Kerry Wood. He couldn't quite top the 14 strikeout threshold that Prior set, but Wood didn't allow a single run in 7 innings. This would be Wood's final start of the regular season, but Prior had another start a few days later. He once again threw a double-digit strikeout game in a win against the Pirates. Later that day, the Cubs won the second game of the doubleheader, meaning they had clinched the division. Wood and Prior looked like aces in the last few games of the season. Mark Prior's final 3 starts of the year were all double-digit strikeout games, and the same can be said for Kerry Wood's final 2 starts of the year. These two were simply phenomenal, but of course, the job wasn't done. Now we head into the playoffs. The divisional series was against the Braves, who finished the regular season with a superior record, tied with the Yankees for the best record in the league. However, the Braves relied on their hitting core, while the Cubs relied on their pitching core. The Cubs won the series on the backs of Wood and Prior, as the Cubs won all 3 games when they started. And it's easy to see why when you look at how well these two guys pitched. Now the Cubs are facing the Marlins, a team who wasn't as good as the Braves. However, the Marlins did beat a 100-win Giants team to make the NLCS. So both of these teams had looked like underdogs going into the series. The first of the Chicago Heat duo to pitch in this series was Mark Prior, who didn't have a dominant performance, but it was enough for the Cubs to tie the series. In Game 3, Wood actually left the game without a lead, but the Cubs were able to pull together a win. Now we fast forward to the dreaded Game 6. 7 innings into his start, and Prior hadn't allowed a single run. Well, in the 8th inning, the Steve Bartman play occurred, and it changed everything. Afterwards, Alex Gonzalez committed an error on a potential double play groundout, and the Cubs just lost control of the game, eventually losing. Then in Game 7, Kerry Wood had the start. In the first inning, he gave up a 3-run home run. Not a great opening. However, Wood took matters into his own hands and hit a home run, tying the game at 3 in the second inning. In the 5th inning, with a 5-3 lead, Wood allows 3 runs, giving the Marlins a 6-5 lead. Dusty Baker had a tough decision heading into the 6th inning. Does he trust a struggling Kerry Wood to get through the bottom of the Marlins batting order? Ultimately, he trusted Wood, but after allowing 2 hits, he was taken out of the game, and one of those base runners would score, bringing Wood's earned run total to 7. The Cubs would never regain their lead, and the Marlins would go on to win the World Series. No one knew at the time, but this would be the end of the road for Chicago Heat. Neither player would pitch a season like 2003 ever again. Both of these players would suffer multiple injuries over the next few years. Mark Prior's demise started at the start of 2004, as he missed the first 2 months of the season with an Achilles injury and elbow soreness. He just wasn't the same. After a Cubs loss, Padres catcher Ramon Hernandez said that Prior used to throw around 96 and 97. Now he was throwing around 91 to 94, and with less control than before. Prior's 2004 stats were solid, but they were nowhere near the level of 2003. Same story with Kerry Wood, as he missed 2 months of the 2004 season with a strained tricep. Prior faced a few injuries in 2005, including elbow inflammation at the start of the season, but he improved upon his 2004 season. Unfortunately, Wood underwent season-ending surgery in August of 2005. This continued on through 2006 as he had a partially torn rotator cuff midway through 2006. Wood became a reliever in 2007, and while he had a few above-average seasons, including an All-Star appearance in 2008, it just wasn't close to what he had shown in 2003. As for Prior, he suffered multiple injuries in 2006. Then, after one minor league start in 2007, he received surgery for multiple tears in his right shoulder. He spent the next 5 years signing minor league contracts, hoping he could stay healthy enough to make it back to the majors. But it just never happened. Prior retired after the 2013 season, and Wood retired midway through the 2012 season. The Chicago Heat had essentially been extinguished after the 2003 NLCS, but it took a few years for fans to come to this realization. Many fans blame Dusty Baker and his over-reliance on Prior and Wood. This makes sense, as when you look at the pitch counts in 2003, these two were severely overworked. However, it doesn't seem like either player holds that same sentiment. Prior said that no matter how many pitches he threw, he never told his manager that he wanted to come out of the game. Today, Mark Prior is the pitching coach for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it's likely he's held as an example across team front offices of why you need to protect young pitchers' arms. As for Kerry Wood, in a 2013 interview, he didn't express immediate interest in coaching or broadcasting, but I'm sure he would be given the opportunity if he desired it. While neither player lived up to the lofty expectations set upon them in their early careers, they both remain symbols of Cubs history. 2003 didn't have a satisfying ending for Cubs fans, but the journey itself was quite exciting, and Pryor and Wood were in the two front seats. So while it's fun to think about the what ifs, it's also fun to relive the highlights and moments that these two brought in the space of one season. Chicago Heat may have been extinguished, but the memories live on forever. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks for watching.